Good evening, everyone. I'm Lucy Headley from the Ridgefield Library, and tonight I am very happy to introduce our Poet Laureate, the best Poet Laureate ever for any town, Barb Jennis, who will take over as Master of Ceremonies. Welcome, Barb. Good to see you.
Thank you, Lucy, and welcome everyone. It's a wonderful evening to have you here. Lots and lots of great poetry coming your way. I want to wish everyone a happy spring, happy Passover, happy pink moon tonight and through Friday, and of course, happy Easter on Sunday. I wanted to introduce also a few upcoming events here at online that will be happening during National Poetry Month. Do a little screen share here quickly. On Wednesday next week, we have the Connecticut Poetry Circuit Collegiate Poets. These are 5 amazing young poets who were selected by a panel of poet judges to have their work promoted as award-winning. The next week, we have, that's right. Next week, we have Praise This Place, which is our Earth Day celebration, featuring 4 poets, Lou Gabordi, Amy Noraki, Dr. Jean Linville, and John Stanizzi. And then also we have in May coming up our next Four Corners, Poems from Connecticut's Four Corners presentation will feature Karen Warinsky, Brian Clements, Christy Max Williams, Marilyn Johnston, and Jim Kelleher. So I hope you'll tune in for all of those as well. Tonight, we're going to begin with a wonderful poet, the Poet Laureate of Woodbury. Sandy Carlson is a poet and educator in the Northwest Corner. She's Poet Laureate of Woodbury, where she hosts monthly ekphrastic writing workshops at Woodbury Public Library. Sandy also hosts the Woodbury Writes podcast in collaboration with the library, and the podcast People and Their Poems as part of her own work, exploring the works of Connecticut poets and the sources of their inspiration. A few people here tonight have been featured in that, myself included. It's a great podcast. Thank you, Sandy, for your citizenship. Sandy has published extensively over the years. Her recent collection of sonnets, Mother Tongue, honors language and family. You can find out more about her work on her website, which I'll post in the chat. So welcome, Sandy.
Thanks, Barb. It's awesome to be here tonight. And thank you. And you know what, with People and Their Poems, if anybody's out there who's writing poetry and would like to be a guest on the podcast, get in touch with me. It's not an exclusive group. It just goes as it goes, and you're more than welcome. All right, so I'm going to start with a little sonnet called Stirred Too Soon, and I have a heavy lined shirt on and a short sleeve shirt underneath because that's the world we live in. My daffodils are about to pack up and move south. They're done with this nonsense of 70 degrees today, 50 tomorrow. Anyway, this is called Stirred Too Soon. A day of unseasonably warm weather brushes with the slightest stroke everything, stirring to greenness the hibernating understory and the moss and the grass, privet washed downhill from a long-lost hedge. Life's warm breath expresses itself in waves of music as an ensemble of geese sing their way into the sky from water until all that remains are the contrails of notes full of sadness, striving, aching for a voice worthy of making a reply to the sky. The world's not ready for us. The cold will come again and claim your soul. If only heart alone could be your shoal. 80 degrees tomorrow, guys, so hang in there. The second poem I have is called Peace Weavers. I wrote it in honor of Women's History Month for Justice Southbury, a group that meets every Sunday at Playhouse Corner in Southbury, exit 15, to highlight various social justice causes. They're an ad hoc group with no central administration, and they're just an awesome group of people. And I did a poem called Peace Weavers, and comes out of my understanding of the Odyssey and the tradition of weaving that is a female craft. Athena is the goddess of weaving, and wherever there are weavers, there seems to be wisdom. So Peace Weavers. Russian terror raining hard on Ukraine led her people into foreign lands. So, would Putin's menace empty villages snug in the snow-fed Carpathians? The reporter asked. Natalia answered, "We are not leaving. Here we are weaving the wool of our sheep on mountains so steep no man stands a chance to stop with a glance. Life close to this land. No, this is our stand." Thus, Natalia Kischuk, with other Hutzel weavers, added her voice, sure in her choice, decide with earth and art, earth's beating heart, no fear or malice, just peace with what is. Brave Natalia and her weaving sisters, under mountains close to the sun, are one with the All-Mother, Frigga, Norse goddess of weaving clouds, mist, fog into seeing, weaving events, magic into being. With her Celtic sister Brigid, goddess of poetry, midwifery, dyeing, weaving, divining, making, and breathing life into livestock, the harvest, seeing, transforms earth into heart, speaks justice's part. The weaver's world tree claims eternity, travels Saul's spun sunbeams from the Baltics to Olympus, finds Athena among us, weaving justice and truth to assuage our ruth, like the Hutzels, finding art in life's truth. Spider grandmother of the Hopi, bride of the sun, creator of human life, your Navajo spider sister teaches humans to love the earth and sun, enjoy earth's treasures, celebrate pleasures. Amaterasu, spinner and weaver of sunbeams, teach us to wake from dreams of peace and make them happen, give release to visions of cooperation, hope for the untried young, their song to be sung. Across time and space, the story is the same. World myths are our sisters and our mothers, who help us understand our brothers. Angel extinguishers of male violence, peace weavers shaping the story of hope, bearing the weight of our grief, that we might cope, birth a new day wrapped in love's warm gift, weaving love's story and healing man's rift. Natalia's bravery, no form of slavery, but of life, at her loom, freedom's midwife. So all the mothers together take me back to my mother. May she rest in peace and be with us now. It's a little poem called Learning to Ride. My birthday's in December and my horseback riding lessons were a birthday gift. So they didn't last too long. I was not sturdy enough to endure the regimen of the stables in the winter. But anyway, learning to ride. I remember my first time on a horse, my mother watching from outside the ring as I put my right foot in the stirrup and hauled myself up, swinging my left leg over the animal and slipping my left foot safely into the stirrup. She was an old mare, well used to her children, who had no idea about horsepower. She carried me around the ring, giving me time to learn to move with her easy gait. My instructor to roll with her moves, to hold the reins in my right hand, rest my left hand on my thigh, but mostly to sit tall. The horse is not a chair, not a couch. You are a guest. Let Pegasus fly. My mother watched as I learned to trot and to canter, as I sought the rhythm of this matriarch. There would be no race, no finish line in my time of riding horses. Instead, I learned to sit properly, to read the gestures of a mother who has done it all before and would get me home, better versed in knowing my place. So I am not an athlete by any stretch of the imagination, and my dear mother, she learned football so she could talk to my brother-in-law, and she was about out of gas when I finally got married to a guy who loved baseball. Anyway, we're still married. It's all good. This is called Who's Your Team? Just seconds before the dismissal bell, a student asks, "Do you have a favorite baseball team?" I am his English teacher. I appreciate his optimism as he reaches out to my sweatered soul. Yankees. I inherited them from Mom. You? He says, me? I like the Cardinals. Cardinals. Spirit world messengers. Cardinal hope, my mother's legacy. A warm blue and white satin smooth jacket, script lettered Yankees, proud across the front. Once our gift to her, now her gift to me. The babe, Yogi, Joe, backyard wiffle ball. Stories, memories, sunshine. Mom made them all. I just had, my mom was sick. I would bring her roses from Trader Joe's on my way to Pennsylvania through Danbury from Woodbury on Fridays. And I always got her yellow because it was her favorite color. And my dad once asked me why towards the end of her life, why yellow? It's her favorite color, Dad. And he didn't know. So we educate each other, right? We call 6 yellow roses. 6 yellow roses in a water glass are my company tonight. They are enough, even if I bought them for myself, which I did because they were there and I wanted them. They will die in a week, but in the meantime, they will blossom. I have willed this, cutting off their leaves, trimming their stems, adding that white powder to the water, and turning up the heat in the house. I bled when I gripped their stems to cut all 6 in one go, because I do things like that, in a rush and without thinking, because I see the possibilities and find them beautiful. My blood made no difference, and it was a small price. In the morning, their fragrance will fill the room. The flowers will open, their stems will remain strong. It is not yet over for these roses, but when it is, I will invert them until they are dry, and I will remember I bought myself roses because I wanted them, and I could. And just one last little poem called One Face, another one from Mom. I was told I'm a dead ringer for my mom, and you know, when people are alive, you don't see it because we know each other too well we see everything else on top of that. And now sometimes when I see my reflection in my computer screen, I think, oh, wait, what? And it's a jolt in a good way. This is called One Face. I see in the lines of my face, your face. Smile lines around our eyes and our mouths from a lifetime of drawing back the curtain to expose open souls to sun's warm light, eager to be welcomed into bright days, sunlit words filled with love's joyful laughter, bubbling from the fountains of full hearts, trusting bright eyes clear of illusion. Our world wants more love than it ever gives. Our hearts give more love than love they receive. We see dark clouds that would extinguish joy and pass through them chins up for the last word. The contours of our face say joy prevailed. Looking life in life's face, love gleams unassailed. Thank you.
Wonderful, Sandy. Really lovely poems. Thank you so much. I especially like the one about the yellow roses, also my mom's favorite. So really came close to home. Next, also folks, if you have comments that you want to make to the poet along the way, please put them in the chat. It's always fun for them to kind of go and see what people have said. So feel free to do that. We'll also take questions in the chat at the end. So if you have questions on mine, just hold on to them till the end. Okay, so next up, we have Srinivas Mandavilli. Srini is a pathologist working at Hartford. Srini is a pathologist working at Hartford Hospital with an interest in oncologic pathology. He attended medical school in India before training in pathology in the US. Srini has been writing for the past few years with poems published in Rattle, The Raven's Perch, Verse Virtual, The Night Heron Barks, Jam Up, which is the journal, of course, of the American Medical Association, and elsewhere. His poems have been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and won the Vivian Shipley Prize, awarded by the Connecticut Poetry Society. His chapbook, Gods in the Foyer, was published by Antrim Books. So please welcome Srinivas Mandavilli.
Thank you, Barb. for the introduction and for the invitation, and the Ridgefield Public Library for hosting. It's wonderful to see dear friends and poets. And I'll read 4 poems today. I had bought a book by the way, my audio is okay, Barb and others? Yeah. I bought a book by Salman Rushdie recently, and his recent book of fiction, and it reminded me of a quote that perhaps was aimed at writers of South Asian descent. He had advised writers and poets to avoid tropes like guava or the mango, for example, in their writing. But here's a poem called Mangoes. Anyways, there's a word that appears here called pan. Pan is a after-dinner delicacy of sorts with betel nut and betel leaf eaten in different parts of India. And this is a prose poem, which sort of reminds me, if you want to read really good prose poems, look up the book by Charles Rafferty. It's wonderful. Mangoes. I bring a boxful from another planet. Wash under cold water in a white sink. Wipe the skin with care. Cut lengthwise with a paring knife. Keep peel intact. If my mother were here, she would grab the fleshy pit and devour the ambrosial flesh, juice running down her arms. It reminds me of my granduncle in his white crumpled shirt, blanched gray-peppered hair. His laughter showed a pan-stained tongue as he brought crates of fruit each summer. Perhaps I will decorate the front door with a string of leaves like my father did, or chop the unripe funds into triangles, pickle them with mustard oil, salt, fenugreek, red pepper, as my hands become my grandmother's. I tell this story to my girls of how difficult it was to climb the tough textured tree, standing under its blossoms in searing heat, and think of golden pulp in a steel bowl. This next one is called Jeep Tour in Death Valley National Park. My wife and I, we do enjoy going out to the national parks, like many, the day hikes in there, etc. And how it can sometimes feel like you might have become part of the landscape. And at other times, reminds you of a different place, perhaps, a different time. And like in this poem, the last stanza alludes to the Olduvai Gorge by the Great Rift Valley in Tanzania, where perhaps all of life began for mankind. The poem is called Jeep Tour in Death Valley National Park. We ride the curve of a single dirt road, which takes us by a wire fence. There are 2 burros still in the sun, one gray and the other fair, a strip of white on their noses. Behind a gentle hill and some broken stone, there is a rusted brown truck, tires newer than its paint, also a roofless concrete home. A mining town, the sign said. The post office closed and the town died. I photographed the wire fence, the darkening valley, cradled in obtuse angles of hills. Dunes undulate, then splay beside the tar road. Its yellow divider moves us past painted rocks, a sea of salt, the hint of spring flowers, before turning east into light. A most singular sun focuses on the phenotype, canyons where we look for petroglyphs, pose, pause, and rethink like a theorem. How it feels that you're suddenly inside a stone. I once saw another sunset against acacia trees, fossils, and sinkholes in limestone bedrock. We returned to a rift, arm in arm, without seeking love or companionship. There is nothing but ground, nothing but where it all begins. Over currents of magnetic fields, thermal strum, lift the bush plane, eyes hooded, it rides, seeking its own heart. Grandfather. My maternal grandfather had passed away of lung cancer related to smoking. And I remember he was brought to a hospital in Mumbai. And at that time, I was an intern just out of medical school. And my uncle called me to come to Mumbai. So I went there. And we were in this small hotel room. And my uncle asked me to examine my uncle. My uncle asked me to examine my grandfather. And his chest was full of like a pleural effusion. And my grandfather asked me, could it be TB or something like that? I never visited him after when he passed. And this poem sort of imagines visiting him after, grandfather. There are a couple of words that appear in the poem. Charminar and Will's Filter are cigarette name brands. And Tata means grandfather. Your name is on a yellow card. I'm sorry, let me start again. Your name is on a yellow cardboard tag on your toe. I tremble as I bend, removing rimmed glasses, crisply ironed clothes, the gold-strapped watch. I lift both lids, stare into your eyes. We are playing rummy. You are crotchety, unwilling to throw down any bad hand. Then I'm off on a rover bicycle, like someone possessed, to the cooperative store, buy 2 packs of Charminar, not Will's Filter. The heft of your naked, bruised body is on a steel gurney, and tentatively I place fingertips on your ribs. In the darkening air, the scalpel snug in my hands, a swift Y incision exposes the atria, ventricles, and dust, and smoke, and ash. Glistening pleural cavities flooded with a hemorrhagic effusion. We always made an odd pair by the gullies flush with the first monsoon. I remember the geometry of paper boats, a cigarette held stylishly on your lips. I first learnt of death in a backyard on a Sunday morning. You cleanly sliced up a young chicken's neck. I gasped, slipping off the railing, peered into its eye as if it were a camera shutter. I recall heeding your advice, lit Charminars barely held on lips, later biting on a raw onion on the way home. I could be any good son, rising within an old grandfather. I think I'll sleep in this night's mouth. There are footfalls of rain. Good night, Tata. And last, a poem called Visiting Golconda Fort. I visit India every year to my hometown of Hyderabad in South India. And on its outskirts is this magnificent yet crumbling Golconda Fort that had historically passed from Hindu kings to Mughal kings. It's also an area where the Kohinoor diamond was found. This poem, part of the reason I picked was published in an anthology recently of poets who have a relationship to Hyderabad and have written about Hyderabad. And in the title of the book in Hindi is Hum Aise Bolte, which translates to This is how we speak. So here is Visiting Golconda Fort. You return to the city in winding lanes, stop to buy pomegranates from a boy who stands by a goat with his stick. You arrive at the ramparts, swayed by how certain things remain impregnable, climb stone stairways past bazaars and barracks, hear bull elephants smash metal spiked gates. You marvel at peacock and lotus motifs, your mind drifts into tunnels. On a high terrace, the air is thin and rare. All history becomes cool in the dimming dusk. You look down at Hyderabad. It sways in the distance in blue and orange bands of late summer heat. Tombs dot the horizon like beasts resting on their haunches. You descend the hill, past the mosque and Kali temple, hear first a delicate flutter, scratching, percussive flapping over the entire ceiling. Such bats must also have watched the siege of Aurangzeb. The dead rise, walk the battlements and bastions. When you sleep, you have no name. 1,000 bats fly in your skull. This time they make no sound. You hold up your hands. There are diamonds in your grasp, as if you have dipped your hands into these granite hills. This piece of history stops for you, puts its head in your hands. Then you begin the faithful work of returning. You find a guide to tell you a story you know. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Srini. Oh, the grandfather poem, I think, check the chat because you've got a lot of incredible comments on it. So thank you very much. Next, we have Pegi Deitz Shea. Pegi, two-time winner of the Connecticut Book Award, Pegi Deitz Shea has published more than 450 articles, essays, stories, and poems for adults, and award-winning books for young readers. She's taught creative writing at UConn, the Mark Twain House, and the Institute for Children's Literature. Shea founded and directs the Poetry Rocks reading series in Vernon, where she serves as the town's inaugural Poet Laureate. Her first book of poetry for adult readers, The Weight of Kindling, was published by Grayson Books in 2022. So please welcome Pegi Shea.
Yeah, thank you, Barb, and thanks to Ridgefield Public Library. Barb is another spectacular poet laureate, and you both set such examples for all of us. So thank you for your work. My book starts out with a series of grandparent poems. I only really had one grandparent that I met, and it was my Nana, my father's mother. So I'm going to start with the first poem in the book. It's called Nana's Question, and you should know too, that her husband was abusive, and through her stories, I kind of figured out the kind of person I wanted as a husband, and she also was the one to introduce me to travel, and I became just crazy for travel. Nana's Question. Her stomach weighing heavy with future, her navel gone flat. Vinnie asked her husband, Harold, where does the baby come out? What do you think, girlie? It's the same way it went in. As Harold left for the pool hall, she wept at her, not knowing. I'll pay him back, big shot. She shook his pants by the ankles till it rained silver and copper on the frayed rag rug. Suppressing a smile, she waddled past her mother-in-law on the porch and crossed the dirt road to the 5 and dime. Malted balls, saltwater taffy, red-hot dollars, black licorice sticks. She ate every last bit and then bolted the door to her bedroom. Not long after, an awful ache, too much candy. She tried to stay mum, but her screams didn't mind her. Nag-in-law banging on the door. Open up, girlie, let me in. Vinnie crawled through pink waters, delivered her son into hated hands. 5 children grown and flown. Harold long underground. She said, I didn't start living till the day he died. That to me was so sad when she told me that as a grown woman, that was not going to happen to me. One of the best things I ever did was backpack through Europe after college, and the first few poems I'm going to share with you are set in countrysides, which I love. And my oldest brother married into a French family, and I had studied French, so I had particular affinity for France. I'm not going to read all the small poems in this series. There are 11 of them, but I'll read a few. And this first one is for Charles Rafferty. Where are you? On my screen there. I didn't know you were into fungi until this night, but I had this put aside anyway to read. It's the third one in the series. Pigs on leashes snuffle in muzzles, snort towards buried treasure. Finding black fungi, they wheel and squeal. Men bend into saplings, yank pigs back, give them carrots. Pierre pays beaucoup for a tiny truffle. It tastes like spongy dirt. He chews slowly, the proverbial pig in merde. So Pierre was my brother's uncle-in-law, I guess. And both he and his sister were teens in the French Resistance. And I have a big unsold novel about them. Okay, the next one I'll read is N. Okay, Pierre's diatribe. I gotta put on my accent for this, so pretend you're in France. You Americans go under your arms, on your feet, between your legs. Listen, a good lover is like a fine camembert. And the last one in the series I'm going to read is it's about one of his friends who runs a flour mill right near his house, and he only makes the flour for bakers who enter into bread contests. So imagine French bread, and to begin with is fabulous, and then this is the cream of the crop. And the word moulin is French for mill. Outside the moulin, ancient grindstones are vases for wildflowers, or seats for pondering the past reflected in the mill pond. The miller pours prize-winning flour into my palm. Manger! In the oven of my mouth, the powder silkens on my tongue and rises as proof. The next poem is called Between Urbino and the Adriatic. And I met up with a college friend, Jody, in Italy, and we crashed on the floor of her friend's place where she was going to summer school in Urbino, where it's the home of Raphael. And Jody and I just took the beach to the park every day. We took the beach to the park. We took the train to the beach every day. So I'd like to ask you to close your eyes for these short 4 tanka and just let your senses go wild. Morning train in Italy, the odor of fried liver, locals wearing summer, dark rings under arms, wet bands beneath bosoms. In Pesaro, doing what Pesaronas do, bronze breasts on the beach. Loose roosters chasing chickens across the plaza. A groom dances with his bride. Porters pick grapes at stops, feed me through the window, slaking my day. This is the train called Rapido. I have a series of poems about 4 instances when I was assaulted in Europe. But for these 4, there were hundreds of fantastic experiences where people came to my aid, took me in for the night if the trains weren't running anymore. And so I'm going to read the first one. Jody and I were going to travel down to Greece, and she suggested that we go through Yugoslavia. So this is 1982, when it was still heavily communist. And of course, being adventurous, we both said, yes, let's do it. Open season on American Girl Packbacker, 1982. Instead of yelling help, yell fire. 1, too deep behind the Iron Curtain. And you should also know this is a prose poem, and I'll pause just slightly going from the poetry sections into the prose. Midnight train into Belgrade, Serbian soldiers board, drag men off, shout Jody and me off, lock us out of the station, stand guard. Shit. Train cars and station benches, my bunks on Summer in Europe on $10 a day. Toothless kerchiefed women seize our arms, shove pictures of beds in our faces. I yell, no dinar. Want Italian lira? They spit. No one wants our penny candy. We wander, the dark, dense as coal. Every day, every door locked, every light closed. One hotel clerk invites us in, opens the cloakroom, and lets us lie on the floor. Soldiers rustle in at 5, kick us to the street. Famished, fatigued, broke, we trudge the pre-dawn. Bars are full. Men knock back shots before work, point at the strange sight, us. Sky lightens to pewter. Soldiers post at every corner, Kalashnikovs ready. Jody and I sneak photos of gray communist buildings and Cold War mannequins from the 50s. Finally, 9 a.m., we cash travelers' checks, buy enough sausage, cheese, bread, fruit, and wine to last until Athens civilization. Also boarding hundreds of drunk young men bound for mandatory military service. On the quay, mothers weep, girlfriends squeeze, fiddlers screech, vendors hawk beer. We find a compartment, sigh with relief. Then 4 men barge in behind. Rank as rotting garbage, they leer at us, smack their lips, slur at our body parts, slug from bottles, lean out the windows and smash the empties against the train. The men roar, we duck shards. Jody and I tighten our money belts, escape to the aisle, SRO. A sober officer smiles. Please, he says, making room at the open window. Thank you, I say. Sanku, he repeats. He lets us be. We chug by belching factories, beige blocks of apartments, beige brick houses, then small farms, bony cows, beige milk, then mountains. We crane to see peaks, hold our noses in tarry tunnels. The officer chuckles, chestnut eyes, full lips, good teeth, rare in Yugoslavia. He pats his chest, Theta. We point to ourselves, Peggy, Jody. Inglesa? No, American. Wary, I ask, Serbian? New, Romanian. Ah, Nadia Komanichi. Da! I mention eating, we'll share. Da! In our compartment, the drunks' faces are bursting with the last of our food. Theta lunges, bellows them to the dining car to buy us meals. Red-faced, they flee. An hour later, they return. Beer bottles clutched in hands, our food clutched in armpits. They drop it on our seats. Candy? I yell, you stupid assholes. Smirking, they shrug. We eat the chocolates, bitterness clogging our throats. Soon my belly aches. I need the bathroom. Jody minds our backpacks. I squeeze through sweaty masses to the WC. Floor sick with piss. Mirror missing jags. I hover above the seat. Suddenly the door slams open. The ugliest of the drunks butts my head, pins my arms against the grimy wall. Then his dogshit breath, green crooked teeth, greasy drool all over my face. I twist, kick, holler for help. I picture his gang behind him and scream, fire, fire. Like magic, he's yanked away. Theta's punches double him over. Uppercuts snap his head. A conductor breaks them apart. Theta explains. The conductor's sneer says to me, You get what you deserve. I feel like a stomped upon roach. At Skokie, Vetta forces the drunks off before him. Words for thank you, I kiss his cheek. Our train pulls away, lighter upon the tracks. And the last three much shorter poems are for the family, which then my family poems take up the last part of the book. This is called My People. It's for my daughter, Deirdre. Squat, round Fisher-Price figures, plastic Lego wizards, Disney characters, Dollhouse Brothers, Polly Pockets, Fitchy, Ditchy, Zaga, and Snort jostle each other, jammed into the mesh bag the girl now dumps on the coffee table. My people, she exclaims, expecting adoration, obedience at least. She has made a playscape from Lincoln logs, wooden blocks, and cylinders of all colors. She lines up her people behind the slide and gently glides them down one by one. 2 by 2 they tilt on the seesaw, then 4 try the merry-go-round, but spin off, fly across the room. She arches an eyebrow, sends another 4 spinning and flying, and another, until her people cover the floor like spilled popcorn. 20 years later, she teaches preschool, then changes into cleat to play hooker for her rugby team. And now she coaches unified teams, and it's like, why are people parents entrusting her, my daughter, with their little children? I don't know, but apparently she's a very good teacher. Next one I'm going to read is from my son, Tommy, called Your Bequest, and it has an epigraph from Wallace Stevens' The Creations of Sound. We say ourselves in syllables that rise from the floor, rising in speech we do not speak. Dad, you could whistle a frown off a face. Listen now to your grandson whistling alone in the cellar beneath me, playing guitar so leisurely that each string speaks in awe of the other. His notes reverberate up through my feet like seedlings of grass ascending through your ashes on the bottom of the sea. No wonder birds rest on ocean waves, inspired by breath from below. And my last poem is called Words in Bed, and it's from my husband, Tom. My groom, the professor, father of my children, falls asleep next to me in the midst of 34 across. Pen in French, 5 letters. I resist the urge to answer myself. Some nights it's a novel whose margins he fills with scribbled allusions, soporific confusions. He rises early, I do not. I wake up with blue inky blots on our flannel sheets, or red wobbly lines crossing my skin, often the Times draped over my hips. All are words, words are all we light upon when tongues tucker out. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Wonderful, Peggy. Thank you so much. I will never forget the line, a good lover is like a fine camembert.
I know. But so next time you have camembert.
but there were others, such beautiful other lines in there too. Bronze breasts on the beach, and the porters feeding you grapes through the window, slaking my day. Just lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Charles Rafferty. Charles Rafferty has published 15 collections of poetry, most recently A Cluster of Noisy Planets. His poems have appeared in The New Yorker, Oprah Magazine, Poetry Daily, Verse Daily, The Writer's Almanac with Garrison Keeler, you know who I mean. Connecticut River Review, Prairie Schooner, and Plowshares. His second collection of stories is Somebody Who Knows Somebody. His stories have appeared in the Southern Review, Milk Candy Review, Juked, OK Donkey, and New World Writing. His first novel is Moscow-Delphia. Rafferty has won grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Connecticut Commission on Culture and Tourism. Currently, he co-directs the MFA program at Albertus Magnus College. So please welcome Charles Rafferty.
Thank you so much, Barb. And thank you, everybody, for the room is packed, and I really love it to read to a crowd. It's so it's just nice to have a crowd. And thank you, Srini, Sandy, and Peggy. Your poetry is great. You're going to be hard to follow. I'm going to read most of my poems tonight from my latest collection called A Cluster of Noisy Planets, and it's all prose poems, which just means they're tiny paragraphs. I haven't bothered to line them. And I'll start with the poem that opens the book. It's called Greetings. I counted the water towers, the active smokestacks. These were the breadcrumbs I thought would lead me back. Now I know it's possible to drive so far, we forget why we left, that the journey continues even after the car breaks down. I used to think I had no message, but the message is me, bloodshot and hungry, spilled coffee down the front of my shirt. People of the future, gather round. I have traveled through ink to greet you. And I'll say from the outset, I don't have a lot of snappy stories about my poems, so I'm going to hope that you just bear with my delivering them rapid fire to you. This next one is called The Pond. The world is in short supply. This field of goldenrod will never be enough, and the ocean feels suddenly crossable. In every apple, an orchard waits, but who has 20 years to cultivate it? Above our house, the contrails of the jets have turned into actual clouds. The rain they promise is another lie. Meanwhile, the taste of my blood implies that I am rusting, that a broken machine lies half submerged in the pond I carry with me. Marbles. At a certain point, manic depression became bipolar disorder. The world has always been in flux. Just look at the sky. There are fewer stars now than when I was a boy. I cannot say who took them. I cannot remember the pictures that they made. Consider Istanbul. It used to be Constantinople, and before that, Byzantium. Nothing endures. I had a jaw men wanted to punch. Now the ground I stand upon feels like it's made of marbles. In Wyoming, they've just begun hunting the grizzly bear again. It is finally safe enough to be killed. I can't get over it. My teeth were once a dazzling white. All three of my brothers were living. This one is called, I've got a lot of poems that have a title structure called The Problem Of or The Problem With. I'm not sure why that's so attractive to me, but it is useful for framing whatever it is I want to say on occasion. And this is one of those poems. It's called The Problem with the Colosseum. Everyone wants it to continue. The arches, let me start that again. Everyone wants it to continue. The arches, the latrines and animal cages, the rooms where men wept in what passed for their last privacy. When the emperor showed up, the lions ate the slaves. There could be no other outcome. It's still here at the center of Rome, obstructing traffic and collecting the dung of gulls. For the price of a shrimp dinner, we can see where Caesar sat. We can feel the stone that bore him up and which we have not let crumble. Mutations and duplications. These birds, for example, so many songs and so few nests. They won't make sense until I find out where they came from. Isn't that always the case? Vestigial fingers show up inside the flipper of the whale, and avocado derives from the Aztec word for testicle. Way leads on to way. I could trace myself back to an Irish king, and still I'd have no idea. All the while, the swans are duplicating their grace in the waters of our lagoon. The poem I want to read next is where the title of the book comes from, A Cluster of Noisy Planets. And I actually do have a story to tell on this one. I used to live in Pennsylvania, and there was a creek beside our apartment that I used to go fishing in. Not with a rod and reel. I would just go out there with a net and a bucket and catch what I could find and bring it back and put it in my aquarium. And this is recounting a time when I caught an eel in the creek. And at the time, I didn't realize that eels actually come from the Sargasso Sea out in the Atlantic Ocean, that part of their life is lived there. And this poem is called Sargasso. And if you don't know the Sargasso Sea, it's famous as like a dead spot in the ocean where a lot of currents converge, and therefore a lot of seaweed and stuff collects there. Sargasso. The seaweed collects and refuses to disperse, like moths around an August porch light or the scent of dead raccoon. The message in a bottle goes undelivered here. Drowned bodies don't roll ashore. But now I learned the eel I caught in a Pennsylvania creek was born amid this tangle, that it likely was headed back that way after greasing my palms at twilight. I remember looking up just after, how a jet slid over my portion of the sky like a cluster of noisy planets. Asymmetry. The lopsided tree eventually topples, and the fiddler crab must carry its heavy, unmusical claw. Consider the pinched eyes of the flounder, how it must live and die without seeing the mud it rides. The world is full of ill proportions, a lack of balance, of fairness. If I tore away this bedroom roof, you'd see how the stars have mostly brightened the sky above your side. Frantic counting. A bottle of champagne contains 250 million bubbles. I have no idea who came up with that number. I don't even believe it. The events surrounding an uncorking are not conducive to an accurate census. The proposal accepted, the baby arrived, the desperate new year underway at last. I admit it. I'm a sucker for the green glass of an opened bottle of Bollinger, the dense emerald of it, the sizzle in the flutes as we're peeling off our clothes. Don't talk to me of plans in future times. Let the frantic counting begin. I'll just read two more from this collection, and then I'm going to read a couple of older prose poems, I think. This next one is called N dash, the piece of punctuation. It's the little dash, not the M dash, which is much longer. It's kind of intermediary between hyphen and long dash, and many people don't even realize that this thing exists. So N dash. I am a minus sign, a horizon of ink. I am a tabletop with the legs knocked out, a levitating dime in profile. I am the spine of a thin collection of poems. I am half of an equal sign, an underscore for emptiness. I am a pen full of love letters lying by the bed, too long to be a hyphen, too short to cause a pause. I am a trapeze handle with no girl attached, a single rung on the ladder towards God, the sill of the window I am standing on. And this one is called The End of Mystery. Here, in the golden age of pornography, the full range of human pleasure and degradation fits inside our pockets. Year by year, the stars get harder to see, and my cigarettes have blurred the once fine distinctions my tongue could make of your body. The answers exist, and Google is happy to find them for us. Someday soon, they tell me, a robot will be able to write this poem, only better, and in a font I can't imagine. As I said, I want to read a couple of poems from The Smoke of Horses, but first I'm going to read one newer prose poem that hasn't been collected anywhere yet, and it's just called The Problem with Maps. And Peggy, I'm thinking of this because of your Belgrade story. The Problem with Maps. When I was growing up, there was no Southern Ocean, and the land comprising Yugoslavia was unbroken and pink. Everything falls out of fashion, though. Certain movies used to scare us, and there was a time I'd stand in line for concert tickets. It is easy to forget about the Visigoths and how they treated Rome. But across the world, 28 royal families continued to breed their kings. Mount St. Helens, I am reminded, was at one time taller. This poem is called Diminution. And I'll read just two more. Diminution. Socrates taught Plato, and Plato taught Aristotle, and Aristotle taught Alexander the Great, who founded a city that would house the most voluminous library of the ancient world, until it was burned, until forgetting came back into vogue. The great minds come down through the years like monkeys descending from high branches. Always a leopard is waiting to greet them, in the tall grass, among the magnetic berries, in the place they should have checked. And the last one I'll read is another library poem from the same collection. And this poem references remoras, which I think we all know the fish, even if we don't know the fish. If you've ever seen shark footage or Shark Week or something like that, the remora is this kind of sucker fish that's on the underside of the shark, basically snacking on the stuff that comes out of its mouth that the shark can't swallow all at once. And this is called The Saddest Bid for Immortality Ever Devised. I used to transcribe my poems on the blank pages of books by famous poets. I imagined they would ride into the future like remoras suckered to the belly of a powerful shark. But the librarian would always find them and black them out. Later, she resorted to excising the vandalized pages with a ruler and a blade. Those stubs at the end of Paradise Lost in the Mount Laurel Public Library, that's me. Thank you very much. And very patient.
Wonderful. Wow. You know, I have to say, your delivery of these poems adds so much to them. I mean, I've read a lot of them, but it's wonderful to hear them in your voice, Charles.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're very kind, Barb. Thank you.
I'm honest is what I am. Okay. Now, just so you know, next up we have Margaret Gibson, and I'm gonna ask Margaret to unmute because I think I muted you a ways back. So Margaret has some difficulties with her Wi-Fi. So what I'm going to do is show a still picture of her while she's reading. She's really out there, but it's just by turning off her camera, she'll save a little more bandwidth for her voice. So let me share screen now. Share. Okay, so this is what we know about Margaret. Margaret Gibson, Connecticut Poet Laureate Emerita, from 2019 to 2022, has published 13 books of poems, all from Louisiana State University. Most recently, The Glass Globe. In addition to winning the Lamont Poetry Selection from the Academy of American Poets, the Melville Cain Award, and the Connecticut Book Award, she was a finalist for the National Book Award in 1993 and for the Poets Prize in 2016. Margaret has 3 times won the Pushcart Prize, and her work was included in 2 volumes of the Best American Poetry. With a grant from the Academy of American Poets, she edited an anthology, Waking Up to the Earth, Connecticut Poets in a Time of Global Climate Crisis. And I'm gonna, when I put her information in the chat, you can visit her website. So please welcome Margaret Gibson.
Thank you, Barb. And thank you to the Ridgefield Library as well, and to the previous readers, Sandy, Peggy, Srini, Charles, wonderful poems. It's great to see you. I'm sorry that you can't see me in the flesh. Zoom is always a little bit removed, but frankly, this feels really out of the body for me. But I really am back here, back of that grinning photo of mine. And I want to read tonight. One more thing I want to say is that if the sound quality gets really funky and goofy, somebody wave, and we'll maybe try to deal with the problem. I don't know. And on top of everything else, I have a cold. So here we go. I'm going to read a series of unrhymed sonnets that gather under the title Water Music. The poems are about falling in love. Falling in love at any age is pretty miraculous, but at my age, in my 70s still, I think it's probably doubly so. And the poems seek to give you something of that flavor of what it is to fall in love. Water music. Shower. We're going to be so old and cute, it's disgusting, you said in the parking lot of the museum, rain coming down hard. We'd been kissing like teenagers who'd been at it for 100 years, and that was that. I just knew. Today it's clouding over, both sky and lake are white, and I'm remembering the small rain down can rain. I'm remembering how we like to wash each other in the warm rain of an indoor shower. So what if there's thunder and lightning? Please, just no drought and distance. You're bald, my hair is silver. We fit so exactly together, one might just say, but I'm afraid to say it, lest the gods. Provisions. On foot, on the way to the farmer's market, I touch the blossoming hydrangeas, blue as a lake. I touch them gently. I love you, lake, I say to each one, and to the cool air on my shoulders and bare skin also, I love you. To the hollyhocks and melons, to the berries, the muffins, homemade jam, blessings and love. More love to the sweet roll, cheeses, the plums. Appetite, sensation, I salute you. I've lost my mind and sent my heart off on a fool's mission to find it. Thank you, I say, as if you were here with me now. I like to feed you grapes one by one. I love your tongue. Lake light. Bells ring out over the lake this morning. A man balances on a board and rows into a shimmer of sunlight on the water. It's one thing to drink wine, another to make wine from water, another to drink light, pure light, no image, no object, no focus. Deep within us, there's a lake that waits in silence. We can get into it from anywhere. You know a way to touch me so that words cease, and then I'm a lake you can swim in. Then I'm a lake you can drink. Run your tongue around the lip of this lake we seek into the miracle of meeting, beyond knowable thirst, beyond trust. Grace. Grace is not what happens to us. Neither gift nor debt, upsurge nor downpour, not the spark that quickens, nor the last breath one of us will release as the other holds on and swallows hard. Grace is the good in us, no matter what happens. It's garden and well. It's sudden laughter. It's sudden storm and the time it takes to hear each other out. When there's nothing left to long for, nothing to own, it's the word I search for, you find, then put on my tongue. Earth is where it flowers. Grace, the play of your hands on my body, as if we were two guitars. Tuning a string on one will vibrate the same string on the other. All I need is a lake, a length of earth grassed over, and thou. Wine would be extra, music over the top. You're enough. A spacious mind makes room for everything. I can turn in your arms, slick as a seal. I can leap like a dolphin or lie low in the shallows, the trout of an afterthought. The lake has no boundaries. In it, we can float on a cloud raft or clamber out wet and breathless, falling down in the grass so grateful we simply roll over and into each other. And oh yes, we will die. That's a given. But we have this lake, we have this earth, and we're not afraid to love. There's that. Okay. Is the sound okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good. The next poem I'm going to read is called Elegy, with Dog on His Last Legs. And in it, I will be introducing you to my 14-year-old golden doodle. And I think the poem's pretty clear here. Elegy with Dog on His Last Legs. He's deaf like me and gimpy, bony beneath his golden coat. His nickname is Buddha, even though he comes and goes in and out the door like a bad habit. Is he missing something outside? Out he goes. Are we inside? He barks to come back in. Are there deer in the yard? Outside again. But the grass in winter is cold, so what about his comfy old sleeping pad, which of course is inside? Old rhymes on the slant with many words, with fed and bed, with dead. Rhyme its only advantage. But he's alive, and he pushes his long snout between my legs, his version of a cuddle, or he gets between us when we stand close, embracing. Was he my lover in a previous life? Likely not, but it's fun to think so. More rigorous is his daily reminder that fear is worth barking at, good advice worth remembering. When hungry, eat. When sleepy, sleep soundly, snore a little. And if I'm worried that he will die, he's not worried. Whatever the ache is, whatever a stumble or tremor may mean, he gets more table meat in his bowl, more pasta and sauce. In a previous life, he was Italian. When my late husband was near dying, Buddha went over quietly to the side of the bed and licked his hand, just like that, the way the enlightened ones know what each moment requires as it arrives and unfolds. Direct response, an open heart. You may remember that last summer there was a pretty terrific, which means terrible, drought in Connecticut. I was getting up at 6 every morning to water everything and watering again when the sun went down. So I guess this poem started there, but I've always kept a garden or been able to have one. And this poem is a celebration of gardening and working the earth and keeping on working it even as I get older. The poem is called Turning the Garden. Drought all summer. Now autumn equinox, and I'm writing the seasoned gardener's handbook. Kiss me, I've got dirt under my nails. I'm old, the earth also, and we're both here. When I weed in shorter intervals now, my middle finger, right hand, clicks over into a hunch, and it hurts. It takes a while to unlatch. 50 years back, killing frosts arrived weeks earlier. Now a few lilies are back to try their luck. Oh, but death is right here, and wouldn't you know it, I'm death's companion, turning the soil, haunting the weeds that suck what little rain there is from the lilies and remnant bee balm. And I'd love to be just that, a balm that cools the swelter, a balm that works for wound care or self-care, both essential, even if it takes some doing before I knuckle down to either. Take care, we say, as casual as a summer day used to be. Meanwhile, the tall spires of the weeds explode in circular wheelies. Their seeds take off into a shrug of wind. In the woods, weed seeds stick to my socks. I admire their sneaky tenacity. But the lilies now are golden and red, bold French horns that funnel the bees in and out again. How I want to rescue them from any sense of drought, erosion, sunstroke. If it might help, I'd work in the garden until I dropped, watering, amending the soil. Younger, I could dig all day and not get winded. Slow, steady, taking time to study the odd beetle, the tight buds of the peonies, the fine curve of a bean seed as it unfurls, making its entry. I still study things up close, opening myself to the lilies as I do to you, my love, when we funnel and lavish and bloom as if there's no tomorrow. And yes, we're more or less into our final decade. Should we take it easy or go full tilt into the sunset? You may do what you like, but the outcome will be the same. Remember the quote? It's that lovely sage in A Passage to India, a strictly humble man, more direct than I'm cut out to be. For comfort, I might wish to close my eyes and pretend there are no weeds, no brambles, no drought, no death in sight. But that's not possible now. Let's keep it real. We're in love at the outset of the 21st century. Time's running out. Now, if I say time is a river, I'm reminding us to consider the Danube, the Rhine, the Rhone, each going shallow, our own pond green as grass, the actual grass brown, a thatched hut I don't want to lie down under yet. Even now, bending over to catch my breath, I don't believe I will die, or that you will, or the earth as we know it. But get this, a type of blood-red worm has come north to whip and jig about, then burrow and devour soil, nutrients, mycelium webs, whatever's planted. Blink, and there goes the periwinkle, there goes the garden, down the gullet, down the chute, down, 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 into an ending any writer might envy for its resonance. And yet we adjust, we adapt, we realign, we make love. Never mind my mind when I come in from the garden exhausted. We belong to the earth no matter what. Let's shapeshift into ferns, into herons and clouds and bees. Let's converse with the trees. Let's be mindful of the subtle fire that burns within each of us. We're sacred and pagan animals. Stone, root, wind, everything's living. The sun is a lily, the earth a seed. Okay. It really is hard to read without seeing you. So let's see. I guess I'll read one more poem. The poems I'm reading tonight, or not some of them anyway, are coming from the first section of a book called, or what will be a book at someday called Old Love. And this is the last poem in that first section.
Margaret, would you like to turn on your video?
Old Love.
You could turn on your video and see how that works.
I don't. This is fine. I mean, if I turn on my video, you might lose my voice. So
We need
I'll turn it on at the end. Okay. All right. Okay. So this one is called Old Love. There is a quality. This is not just about being old and being in love. This, what I'm looking for and trying to capture in this book, or in this section of the book, is, well, actually throughout the book, is what old love itself is. There is definitely a different feel to it, a different flavor, a different way of being in the world when there's love that's been there for a long time. Even I've discovered that when you're newly in love and you're old and have been an experiencer of old love, you sort of stay in the groove and keep going. But anyway, this poem called Old Love is an attempt to make some sense of that. Old Love. Early winter, evening. I'm making the fire. You're in lamplight, reading. As I'm waiting for the kindling to catch and sink deeper into a bed of coals, I wonder what it is, this love I called old love. I speak of it often as if I knew, but right now I trust only what's in touch with silence and rest, the still point at which one is shown. As the fire builds, the flames curl like tendrils around the split oak, which settles and gives as our bodies give, yielding to touch, passionate touch. And yet, as it burns, each log retains form, growing more radiant from within, even as its rough bark fissures and turns ashen. Old love must be like this, a burning fueled by its own intensity, holding nothing back, also an ascent that embraces letting go. What kind of fire are you? What kind of smoke? Letting go pushes the moment further on, draws me right up the chimney on the updraft, floating into the winter night and into the constellation Orion as it hangs above the gnarly branches of the wolf tree maple, whose roots go deep, whose crown must sense the love that turns the stars. Old love sets no boundaries, nor does it put asunder. Old love is a flame that anchors us to the earth and hearth, even as it lifts us into the boundless. You're reading in lamplight, I'm tending the fire. All those we've loved still with us, as intimate as wood and fire, word and silence. This is how it is. The shape of light is its own radiance. I'm going to stop.
Amazing, amazing. Oh, please put your camera on. I want to see you in the flesh, Margaret. Wow. I don't know if we lost her. Nope, there she is. There you are. Thank you so much. Wow.
Thank you all.
Just beautiful love poems and also sad, but so rich at the same time. I love the elegy for the old dog, but it's an elegy for so much more than the dog. So thank you so much. I want to remind everyone to please, oh, hold on, I'm going to put Margaret's, there we go. I put Margaret's bio in the chat finally. I didn't want to lose it while I was screen sharing. I want to remind everyone to please buy books. The poet's life is not a wealthy one, but it helps. And plus, you have the pleasure of reading the poems on your own and again. So just a reminder to please think about that. I want to thank not only our poets, Sandy, Srini, Charles, Peggy, and Margaret, but also, of course, the Ridgefield Library, our wonderful adult programs coordinator, Lucy Hanley, who helps us put all this together. And I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Just a great sampler of poetry. So happy everything this week. Passover, Pink Moon, Easter, whatever you're toasting. Enjoy yourselves. Be well, and I hope to see you next month.
Thank you, Barb.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, poets. Thank
Thanks,
you,
Barb.
audience.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes.